Back on the ruble crisis. As you know, the ruble's been down the last time I looked about 19% in the past 2 days. Lavrov is talking about maybe moving nukes into Crimea. There are Russians scrambling to buy any hard good they can today because they're afraid of hyperinflation. Is the U.S. concerned that our efforts to punish Russia over Ukraine have gone too far with the plunge in the ruble, and that there may be some geopolitical risks here that we might not want, that there could be some fallout that could be disruptive?
Well, Mike, I think what I would say is that the most substantial geopolitical risk associated with this situation is the Russian regime continuing to trample on the basic international rules that large countries all around the globe should accept. They should be respecting the basic territorial integrity of their neighbors, particularly their smaller ones. And that is a widely accepted international norm, and the international community is going to hold and has held Russia accountable for blatantly violating them. And that is a substantial, allowing that kind of inappropriate interference across the border with Ukraine without any consequences would have significant geopolitical downside.
So what you're saying is you have weighed this, and you believe that it's, not you personally, but the United States has actually weighed this, and we don't think, the U.S. government, that there's too much geopolitical risk we're creating by putting this nuclear armed Putin's back to the wall and the specter of hyperinflation in his country today.
Well, Mike, what I'll be as direct as I can about this, which is that the reason that we have acted in the first place, and the reason that you've seen the United States work so closely with our allies in Europe and around the world to isolate Russia, is because we are concerned about Vladimir Putin and the Russian regime blatantly violating generally accepted international norms. They have done this by inappropriately interfering with their neighbors across an internationally accepted border. And that's why you've seen the international community respond in coordinated fashion, because they're concerned about demonstrating to Russia and to other countries in the world that may be considering similar actions that the international community will not stand for that kind of blatant violation of international norms and rules.
And last follow-up, would you say that this plunge in the value of ruble and the scrambling around the country, people trying to buy hard goods, is a sign of success of U.S. policy?
I think it is a sign of the failure of Vladimir Putin's strategy to try to buck up his country. That right now he and his country are isolated from the broader international community. They are taking desperate actions to try to shore up the strength of their currency. They're enduring significant downgrades as it relates to their creditworthiness and as it relates to longer-term economic projections about their growth. The fact of the matter is, Vladimir Putin actually is the person in the world with the most consequential role to play in trying to reverse this trend. If merely he will live up to the kinds of commitments that he's already made in the context of the Minsk negotiations, you could see the international community start to relax these sanctions in a way that would relieve the pressure on the people of Russia and on the Russian economy, and that would be good for the world. It would send a very clear signal that respecting these basic international norms is important, and it would also allow President Putin to demonstrate to his people that he's actually concerned about their well-being and the well-being of their economy.
Follow up?
Okay, go ahead, John.
Just on that, and this, I think what we're getting at here, isn't there a risk that the success of the sanctions, as you put it, combined with what's happening in the oil markets and what's happening in the Russian economy, that will have the exact opposite effect of what U.S. policy is trying to do, which is to get Putin to back down? What if it provokes Putin to act in a more aggressive way? And we've already seen some signs of this, the aggressive actions, I would add, also of the Russian Air Force in recent days. What do we do if that's the case? I mean, now you've done the sanctions thing. You certainly aren't going to hurt the Russian economy anymore.
Well, I think.
Where are you? I mean.
Well, I think I'd say a couple of things about that. I think that once again, going back to where we were, the consequences of allowing Putin to send the army, or at least Russian military personnel, across the border into Ukraine to support the activities of the separatists in eastern Ukraine allowing that to go without consequences would, I send a very dangerous signal to President Putin. It would also send a very dangerous signal to other countries around the world that may have designs in improperly interfering with some of their neighbors as well. So seeing the international community act in coordinated fashion to counter those steps, I think does send an important signal and does ensure that U.S. interests and our broader interest in a peaceful world are advanced. Now, there's no doubt, the second thing I'll say is this. As the sanctions regime remains in place, the impact it has on the economy in Russia continues to grow. There haven't been substantial increases in our sanctions regime in the last couple of months, but we've seen that as the weeks and months roll by, the impact on the Russian economy continues to bite even harder. And that is a testament to the way in which Russia is isolated, and it's a testament to the kind of risk that President Putin runs when he fails to live up to the kinds of commitments that he's already made. Because the international community has said, once you demonstrate a willingness to start living up to these commitments and respecting basic international norms, we can start to relax our sanctions regime in a way that will relieve the pressure on your economy. So again, it is President Putin's decision to make here about what he wants to do that's in the best interest of his people and the country that he leads. And this is the same fundamental question that President Putin faced this spring. It's the same question that he faced this summer as the sanctions regime was put in place. It's the same question that he faced this fall as the sanctions regime was increased. And it's the same question that he faces this winter as the sanctions that are in place start to clamp down even tighter on the Russian economy.
But do you see a possibility that the decision he will make will be to act more aggressively and more dangerously?
I think what I would say is that if the international community were to turn a blind eye to his blatant violation of the border with Ukraine, that would only encourage him to take more aggressive action against other countries along his border. I don't think anybody has stood up here and suggested that putting in place the sanctions regime would automatically make Vladimir Putin a model citizen. That was never the prediction, and that certainly hasn't come to pass.
But the aim is to get him to back down.
The aim is to sharpen the choice that he faces. And that choice between interfering in Ukraine and looking out for the economic well-being of the people of his country does come into more sharp relief every single day. Okay, Mark?
Yeah, Josh, one more question along those lines.
Sure.
Isn't there a danger that the real pain that average Russians are feeling, that they will respond to it as they have frankly responded to some of the earlier layers of sanctions, and that to rally around Putin even more and maybe fan the flames of Russian nationalism and some would say xenophobia?
Yeah. I'm certainly no expert on Russian public opinion or Russian politics. My predecessor certainly had more experience in this area. But I do think that in the same way that there is a choice that's facing President Putin, the Russian people are acutely aware of that choice too. They understand very clearly that the decisions that President Putin is making as it relates to their foreign policy in Ukraine is having an impact on their economy. And it ultimately will be up to their leader to decide if he's willing to roll back some of those decisions so that he can try to protect the country's economic well-being. I think that fundamental choice is well known among the Russian people. There is an analogy here, and I always hesitate to draw analogies between different situations, and I often am in a position of encouraging you not to do so, but I will just hesitatingly wade into this and suggest that the sanctions regime that the United States worked with the international community to put in place against Iran did have the effect of compelling Iran's regime to come to the negotiating table with the international community. And that was at least in part based on some public pressure that the Iranian political leadership was feeling, because they understood, the Iranian population understood, that the kinds of foreign policy, national security decisions that the Iranian leadership was making was having a very negative effect on their economy. The same dynamic is in play in Russia, that the decisions that are being made by the Russian regime in terms of flouting generally accepted international standards and Ukraine's sovereignty is also having a negative impact on the Russian economy. So Russia's leaders understand that. Russia's citizens understand that too. Again, I'm no expert in terms of trying to figure out or predict exactly what their reaction will be. But based on the reaction that we've seen in a similar situation in Iran, and I think based on the fact that there is a lot of transparency about what exactly is happening here, I do think that the logical conclusion of many Russian citizens would be to say, hey, it sure would be nice for us to have more influence on what's happening in Ukraine, but gee, it also sure would be nice to have some confidence that the value of my retirement savings is not going through the floor.
You think they see that choice despite the pretty iron control of the state-controlled media and what the average Russian sees when they turn on the TV or even?
I do, primarily because I think that the as much as that regime tries to limit the access to information of the citizens, I think that the extreme economic consequences of this decision are readily apparent to every Russian citizen, even those who are not consuming state media. Okay? Juliet.